Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Welcome to We Have Something to Say. I'm going to be going solo today. Kenneth is at his homecoming in Tuskegee. So have a good time, my man. Nothing like a HBCU homecoming to go back and get revitalized throughout the year. See people who just happy to see you. It's nothing like it. If you've never been to one, I encourage you to go to one. We're going to jump right into a couple of topics that I've had some visceral reactions to, but it all runs along the line of what I've been saying for over 2 years now. And I think I tell you all the time, I come from the perspective of when I'm talking about these things, I'm really talking about how they affect the African American community, because I always tell people, at the end of the day, the first community that's going to get hit is the African American community, and how you respond and decide what you want is the key to how you're going to move. And I think most people know that I have a real issue with what I think is this inability to get on the same page about one thing, just one thing. I mean, sometimes I don't even get down what it is. This inability to get on the page about protecting Black women and children from Black men. And yeah, I'm always talking to Black men because, number one, I love Black men. I love the Black community. But I can be disappointed in the things that I love and keep trying to spur people on to do the best thing they can do. And to as Marion McMillan, who's on here quite a bit, always says, move, without always having to feel pain to move. One of the things I want to jump right into is earlier this week, the racist governor, yes, he's a racist governor, Louisiana. And I'm always on Louisiana because in my amateur reading of African American history and the African American Civil Rights Movement, I understand how important Louisiana was. I understand how important Jones, Louisiana was. And that's where the Deacons of Defense came from. That's where CORE was down trying to fight for African American rights at this plant down there, and the terroristic threats they were getting. And CORE stepped in, not CORE, a barber out of Jones, Louisiana, decided to start this group called the Deacons of Defense, who was a former World War II veteran, who said it would dishonor them to not protect the people that came in to fight for their rights. And CORE, whether you know it or not, did not want the Deacons of Defense to come in and guard this one house. CORE was at this one house that this African-American lady owned, and she moved to New York and said, hey, you can use this house as your headquarters. So the Deacons of Defense told CORE in no certain terms, you're going to have to accept their proposition of defense, because they couldn't stand there and stand to see that you're going to get terrorized, particularly at night. They knew the people in their community better than CORE did. And I bring Louisiana up again because earlier this week, Governor Greg Landry, who, by the way, is the one that brought this case that's before the Supreme Court right now, trying to gut the 1964 Civil Rights Act, made this unbelievable comment. Well, it's not unbelievable anymore. I got to stop doing that. Me and Kenneth had a fundamental disagreement. I stopped saying, hey, they won't do something as I'm watching them do it. Made this statement earlier this week that he was not going to, he was suggesting that they put a statue of Charlie Kirk on campus. And in response to that, Ryan Clark, who has a huge podcast with Channing Trouter and Fred Taylor, came out and said that Greg Landry didn't know what he was talking about. He needed to stay in his lane, and that he didn't know anything about football. In addition, he made another statement about the athletic department and the head coach and the athletic director at Louisiana State. And Ryan Clark was speaking on that, to which garnered a response from Roland Martin. And Roland Martin on his show has this African American Studies professor named Greg Carl, Dr. Greg Carl there. And Greg Carl responded the way I've been saying people should respond. And Greg Carl said to Ryan Clark, as much respect as we have for him, you're just dead ass wrong. And so what Greg Carr said, no, I encouraged them to put the Charlie Kirk statue on campus. And his point was, maybe it'll get folks like Ryan Clark to and parents of those football players who make LSU football, and those basketball players who make LSU basketball, and those track athletes who make LSU track, and the volleyball team, and the women's basketball team. Maybe they'll get you to understand that despite just this, you going to LSU is not just about you. So what Greg Carr said to Ryan Clark was, no, what you should have said to those black players and black parents, walk away. Stop playing for a racist institution. Stop playing for a racist state. Stop playing for states that will oppress your rights just because you're comfortable with inside that stadium when all you are gladiators, when your whole community is being oppressed outside the stadium. You have way more power and influence than you think. Just don't play. And he told Ryan Clark, you're a part of the white supremacy, and I don't use that word that often. I don't think it's necessary to use it. We know what we're in the middle of. But I think it's important to say you have some power in this to say, hey, if you don't want us, we don't have to be here. And if your actions and your policies are showing that you don't want us, we don't have to be here. But you don't have the will. And Ryan, you don't have the will to call for those players not to go to LSU. To say remove the black presence from LSU. Because you think the pomp and the circumstances and the celebratoriness of been playing in a big stadium under lights, good morning, Russell, is bigger than the community. And that's the problem. You separate yourself from the community when it's to your benefit. But if the black player, the African-American players of the LSU football team at any given point in time said, we refuse to play. We're going to go to school somewhere else. And that goes for Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, now North Carolina, Mississippi. Y'all could change the whole state. And people say, well, no, I think that's pie in the sky bullshit. There is no SEC the way it is right now, constituted right now, without African-American players. There is not one. There is no University of Texas or Houston or Texas A&M or Texas Tech or any of those schools without African-American players. But the policies of those states will suppress your right to vote and oppress your rights outside the football stadium. And if you made the decision, and I'm going to say this over and over again, if you made the decision to even try it, like Dr. Carr said, you come up with a list of demands before you will come back to those schools. Now, the argument that I've gotten for Kenneth on here, that I've gotten from Kenneth on here, is that, well, you can't say that to a poor black kid who can bring their family out of poverty. I didn't say don't play. I said don't play for them. And that's what Greg Carr's saying. And it's nonviolent. You're not tearing no shit up. You're just saying, I refuse to be a part of this system of this state that's going to oppress me when I'm not playing football or basketball. And it's just mind-boggling me that parents don't see that. I'm just like, why would I send my kid down there? Because they get to play under the lights? Greg Landry is leading a state that is trying to gut the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Literally, they're the ones that has that case before the Supreme Court, saying it is discriminatory against white people. And why would you want to keep playing for those institutions that represent that state, as opposed to you got Southern down there? What else am I missing? You got Grambling down there. You got Xavier down there. Schools that will welcome you and could use the revenue. Why would you keep paying to oppress yourself? I'm floored by that. Floored by this need to want to play for, and not one of those coaches, not one. I'm glad Marion said that. It's about the money. Let me tell you something that's somebody who's a sports fanatic. NIL, which is called name, image, and likeness, which the Supreme Court said the players now had a right to receive, follows the players. It does not follow the school. If Alabama goes 0-11, LSU goes 0-11, or 1-10, or whatever, losing records, the NIL money is going to follow the players. The players dictate whether you get the NIL money. Because a coach can only coach as good as the players he's coaching. And here's the kicker for me. White players wouldn't stay. Let me tell you why white players wouldn't stay. Because they want to compete against the best. So if all the 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 1-star, any star said, you know what, we're going to go to the states that's not oppressing our rights. We're going to go to Michigan. We ain't going to Ohio State as big as they are because Ohio State's governors wish that Ohio State has wishy-washy politics. Hey, you can have it. We're going to go to Illinois where Pritzker is. We're going to go to USC, UCLA, Washington State, Arizona State. And we're going to make them the powerhouses of the country because they have not specifically gone after our rights. All the white players are going with them. You know why? Because you want to compete against the best. And if you're a 5-star white quarterback from the deep, deep South, you're not going to Alabama if you don't have no receivers to throw to. If you're a lineman, you're not going somewhere where you're 0-11 because you're playing against a full front line on the other side of defense. This is football for the ladies to understand. And they all black and they killing your ass. There's a documentary out about the legendary Bear Bryant, who understood this back, I think, in 1972. When he invited UCLA, a team with a all black starting backfield, quarterback, fullback, and tailback, to come to Tuscaloosa to play the University of Alabama, powerhouse university, national champion University of Alabama, and they whooped their ass. USC whooped their ass. It's a great documentary, and Bear Bryant did it because he understood where college football was going, and he understood that Alabama could not win without these players. But the only way to prove to this white constituent, this white crowd, was to let them get their asses kicked. So NIL money follows the players. If you don't think it follows the player, why do you think that the top basketball player in the country is now enrolled at Brigham Young? Brigham Young? Who would let their child go to Brigham Young if he's black? Not me. Not even $5 million. When there's all these other schools that's willing to pay 2, 3, or whatever for him to come there, whereas he's going to be treated better. You're not going to be treated better in a state that's 99% white and don't want your black ass out there in the first place. Not in Georgia. They don't want any groups. So for Ryan Clark to get up there and say, like Greg Cart said, to not call a spade and say, hey, man, there's a way that you can stop Greg Landry from doing this. There's a way you can do it. You just got to have the will to do it. And once again, this is a black men-led suggestion because black women don't play Division I football. Black men and black boys play Division I football. And they get and it's the will, it's this unbelievable tunnel vision that you say, nope. And with that you say, sorry, that's my grandson just came in, that you say, we're going to play regardless of what they do to the community outside of the stadium or the basketball court. We're going to go to Mississippi where Lane Kiffin, because he's a great coach. I'm not playing for Mississippi. Stop telling me you do not have to go to Mississippi. The top athletes in Mississippi can go anywhere they want in the country, into any school. But I promise you, if they make the decision to mass to say, like Greg Carr said, to say, you know, if you want us to come play here, this is the things that you're going to have to do. We got list of demands. Because the SEC would lose too much money. Don't nobody want to watch some 0-11 teams? Or some teams that's 2-8? But you have all these governors who sit there and they watch you do this. I always tell people, it's like testing the fence. All these people, all these governors who are doing this to you, doing this to the community, erasing black history as you play for their institutions. Make that make sense. If they're sitting there watching you let them, you think they're going to do it out of the goodness of their heart? They're not. But you got to have some will to give up something. It's almost like, Russell, we didn't teach. When you and I were coming through Morehouse, it got hammered into our head what the sacrifice Martin Luther King made. We had people come to assembly every week, which we hated. Now you look back on it, you go, I'm glad I had assembly, to impress upon you the sacrifices that were made. And it's almost like people are so selfish, and that they're going, well, you can't talk to me. I can't pay my bills. I did not say, nor has anybody suggested, that you don't go and play and get your education. That, again, why go to University of Tennessee if Bill Lee is doing what he's doing at Tennessee State? Tennessee State used to be a renowned football powerhouse. Grambling used to be a renowned football powerhouse. Grambling and Southern and those and it renowned. We don't have the facilities now because they don't have the money. The money comes from athletics. I was just talking to a friend of mine last night while we were in college, Mississippi Valley State, when Jerry Rice was playing. Jerry Rice, Willie Tyler, is it Tyler? Willie, oh man, I'm forgetting his name. And the other wide receiver on the other side, known as the run and shoot gunslinger, but coached by Archie Cooley. They were running around the country scoring 72 points a game. 72 points a game. They were must-see TV. They were selling out stadiums everywhere you went. They sold out Giant Stadium, 77,000. They sold out Super Bowl, 77,000. I mean, it's the Superdome, 77,000 people. 77,000 people paying money to come in and see them play that will go to their schools' coffers. You think sponsors want to put their name on losing programs? They don't. And those programs are only winning programs because of African American athletes. It just is what it is. But if you let somebody like Greg Landry do what he does, say, I'm going to put a statue of a vile racist. And look, we don't have to get into an argument with some of these fools saying he wasn't racist, man. That's a waste of your energy and a waste of your brain cells. Whatever. I said this before. Leave black conservatives that say stuff like that alone. Those black conservatives have never mentioned the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the gutting of it and what's going to come down the pipeline and how it's going to hurt them because they think that it's not going to hurt them. You can't argue with those people. But the truth of the matter is, you have the will and the power to do something. We just refuse to do it. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it anymore. But his black men just refuse to do it. We don't want to call each other on our shit because I don't understand how any father can be so excited that I let my son play for LSU or mother, knowing what Greg Landry is doing to African Americans in that state. Or the SEC schools in general. In case you didn't know it, the SEC school, Auburn, produced Tommy Tuberville, who was always known as a horrible human being. Even some of the white players knew that. But you elevated him because he made his damn career off black bodies. Off black bodies. And as long as you aren't willing to use the power that you have, look, Marion's going like this. You don't control not one goddamn industry in the country. Not one. But college athletics and professional sports. That's it. It's the only ones you can control. And if Ryan Clark can't say, hey, man, why did the viewer should drop when Dr. Lively came on? Hey, is Dr. Lively on here? I thought Dr. Lively was at Tuskegee's homecoming. He told me he couldn't come on today. So the viewership is not that high. So let's not get it twisted. If you don't have the will to do it, and we can't collectively use our small platforms to call for it, what do y'all expect to happen? I mean, me and Marion talk about this like once a week. What do you expect to happen when you're not willing to use the small bit of power that you have to affect change? I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I'm going to say again, nobody's telling anybody not to accept the scholarship. They're saying don't accept the scholarship from these states that are oppressing your community. And across the South, that's what they're doing. They're trying to build a wall across the South like they did before the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And it's not going to be good for you. You are not going to be spared from it. So Ryan Clark, when you get up there and talk about it in athletic terms and no other terms, you're doing us a disservice, and you're too smart for that. Everybody's going to have some skin in the game. Everybody's going to have some pain. And this is what I would say to anybody that doesn't want to get into it. You don't want to talk to your friends about it. I don't care how imperfect you are. If you're African American, I don't care if you have marital problems, financial problems, criminal problems. I don't care about any of that. You're going to have to get into the game to speak out, because bottom line is all your rights have come from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That's Bruce Pearl from Auburn. They made him resign and let his son coach. I'm not playing for Bruce Pearl. I'm going to make Auburn pay for letting him spew that shit for the last 5 years. I'm not sending any black players, no JUCO players, no high school players. You're not getting my son. He is not the only damn basketball coach in the country. Any state, any coach that builds their careers off black players is going to have to make a stand. Or he's going to have to shut the fuck up. But under no circumstances I'm sending my kid to the University of Mississippi, because you get the opportunity that might send you to the pros, so you're willing to go play for a bunch of racists whose policy shows how racist they are. You're going to go do that? How fucking selfish of you. All these other schools that I'll be running to Gavin Newsom State. You watch Texas wipe out black districts, and you still playing for the University of Texas and Texas A&M and Texas Tech and making them all this money. You doing it and you don't think they see it? Of course they're going to keep testing the things. They're going to see how far you let it go. And your excuse is he has to have scholarship. Not there. He doesn't have to go there. He does not have to go there. She does not have to go there. Mike Loxby is up at Maryland. Great head football coach, used to be the University of Alabama offensive coordinator. Go make him 15 and up. Go make him 15 and up. No, if Notre Dame's going to have to catch that heat, so be it. Until you get that governor to stop fucking with us, no, you're not getting us. I'm not going to University of Indiana. How selfish can you be? There are thousands of other schools. There are so many other Division I schools that y'all can get together and say, we're going to go play for them. Until y'all change y'all's policies, we're going to go play for them. And the fact that NFL players, and I don't say NBA players, NBA says make a stand. If the blowout Stephen A. Smith can be leashed, so can these racist coaches. Exactly. When people say the NBA players, you got to understand they got to make their money. Most of them are in the 99th percentile. If anybody can afford to make some small sacrifice, they can. And the only small sacrifice they got to make is to stand up. They set a precedent when they didn't protect Colin Kaepernick. I said that the minute he knelt. If them African American players don't get behind them, and I mean all of them, as supposed to, I got to make my money at the expense of whom? You just show them what they can, how far they can go with their oppression. Because no NFL owner wants to lose money. Not a one. Not a one. And you make them money. You make them money. They cannot make money without you. So Ryan, no. No, you can't just say for him to be quiet and he's doing, you're going to speak out because he's talking about the AD. And now the new interim AD is African American. Show me how he's going to change anything. Because he has to make his money off black players. And don't talk to me that there's not other schools. There are plenty. USC used to be a powerhouse. UCLA used to be a powerhouse. Because when I was growing up, talented players from Luciani and ARC, they went west. Emerson Boozer, Chip Banks, they went west. That's how some of those teams were powerhouses. They went west. But at some point, you got to make some decisions. You got to make some decisions about how much oppression you'll take. How much is enough? How much is your oppression worth? How much is your community worth? Because right outside of Selma, Alabama, when the civil rights movement started and they were trying to get their rights to vote, those folks didn't have shit but their bodies. The only thing they had was the ability to pull their bodies away. The Montgomery Boys boycott was pulling their bodies away. It wasn't violent. They didn't do anything violent. It was pulling their bodies away. They pulled it away economically, pulled it away from the bus, they pulled it away from the stores. They just stopped. And as Andrew Young told me, the one time I met him, people didn't understand that 90 days before they went down with the children's movement, the African-American citizens had made the conscious decision only by medicine and food. Brought Birmingham's economy to a standstill. Just stop. That's what made things change. They removed themselves. So to have this conversation of which Ryan Clark wants to have it, and again, I like Ryan Clark for the most part. I just think he's just dead ass wrong. I just think that he's scared to say what needs to be said. Because if you all want to see something and you don't really watch football, turn on any college football game to any of the powerhouses, any of the top 20, any of them, and count the number of African-American players on the field for each starting unit, for the starting defense and the starting offense. Count them. Just count them. Matter of fact, don't count them, count how many white players you see. And then you tell me who really has the power with the transfer portal being when it is. Because I'll tell you right now, what they're about to do is if I'm thinking of this, they're thinking of this. They know this is the nuclear option. So they're going to start trying to figure out a way to make those players fulfill their contracts of 4 years on scholarship without having to transfer. That's what they're going to do. That's what the legislature is going to do. And that's what Tommy Tuberville tried to do earlier this year. And that's what he's going to try to do if he's elected governor of Alabama, because he's running for governor of Alabama. He's resigning his senatorship so he can run for governor of Alabama and take Kay out of his place. You think the University of Alabama wants to go 0-11? Look, we know how hypocritical they are, because the junior senator from Alabama ran on a racist platform because people say, here's the logic behind what they think. I can't change anything if I don't get in office. So I got to say what I got to say to get in office in order to affect change. You got to win in order to affect change. That's just politics. And when he made the decision to pull all that federal funding and then realized that at University of Alabama's school system, like University of Alabama in Birmingham, which has a huge medical program, was going to lose federal funds, she came in there to ask him, please don't do that. It would devastate it. Jackie Robinson, yep. All these players, let me put that up there because Marion has one. All those players from Georgia. Syracuse. So why are you dead ass wrong? Y'all have gotten so caught up in playing for these big schools, and you think that's the end all be all. So caught up by what the sacrifice needs to be. And Dr. Carr is absolutely right. If those parents, I just don't get why I would send my kid to a school. Auburn students, when Donald Trump won, Auburn students were out on the campus celebrating like crazy when Kamala Harris lost. They're students. You could go back and pull up video. Why the fuck would I want to play for them? Why would you want your kid down there? They're one step away from finding themselves in a shitty ass situation, no matter how much you tell them to keep their head down. And I got friends of mine who graduated from Auburn. They're not going to like me saying this, but I'm sorry. It's not just about you or your love for your alma mater. It's about how your alma mater and its state treats its African-American citizens throughout that state and what your responsibility is to them. And if you don't have any responsibility to them, we all are fucked. Particularly in Alabama, particularly in Louisiana. And at some point, we're going to have to try to figure out how we wake up the black voters of Louisiana and Mississippi. Because if black voters had just voted in Louisiana, Greg Landry wouldn't be in. Now, if you go and you read people, my former brother-in-law asked me the other day, man, where you get all this information? And I said, shoot, man, I just peruse the internet and find stuff that shocks me. Baton Rouge mayor was an African-American woman. All black people had to do was come out and vote. And they didn't come out and vote. So now they have a white mayor who's literally trying to push them into the sea with their rights. Greg Landry's already doing it as a governor. The mayor of New Orleans, a new lady. And if you literally say, well, shit, you can have it, but we won't be sending you any more bodies, they'll stop. I'm telling you, they will call goddamn legislation within 30 days and say, hey, look, we can't afford to lose these players. We can't. But you got to have the will to do it. You've got to have the will to do it. And you've got to stop making excuses for why you want. They have made the decision to deploy their nuclear bomb. And you better make the decision to deploy your nuclear defense. And again, it's not radical, it's not violent to say you have to protect your community. Your community without the group, you can't move. You living in a big house amongst a sea of white people ain't gonna protect you. You're gonna have to come back to us one way or another. So Ryan, no, I agree with Greg Carr on this one. Those African-American athletes that play for Louisiana, LSU needs to step up and say, shit, we ain't coming to practice. We're not coming to games until you start changing the policy and the president starts taking up, the president of the Board of Regents, whatever they have in Louisiana, starts taking up for our safety and our well-being, and they pull these policies back that are hurting my community that surrounds the school. LSU is right down the street from Southern and Xavier. Or it's across the street from Southern, because Southern is, I think, in Baton Rouge too. So at some point, they're going to have to make this decision. Nick Saban walked at the head of his players doing the black. Nick was smart. Nick understood. Nick understood it was shit. Without these, this ain't going to work. It's not going to work. And if Steve Sarkisian and his black wife can't stand up and say, hey, man, that policy is not going, y'all are gerrymandering the state to dilute the representation of the people who make this program billions of dollars. Greg Abbott not about to have and all them old people not about to have some 0-11 University of Texas team because black players done walked off. They just paid, what's the coach's name? $78 million buyout. You think if them black players walked off those teams in mass to say, or threatened to walk up, they not changing that policy? You crazy. But I'd rather try it than not. So, look, I've told Kenneth many times, man, I'm not trying to have a podcast and get up here every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock just to rehash goddamn news of the week. I'm asking us what we're going to do to try to have some sway and to get people to move some shit. And I think that if you know some people in Augusta or wherever you're at and they think about sending their kids to one of these schools, you need that. You at some point, you got to stop saying it's not my business when it is your business, because it affects you in your life every day. People keep saying, well, it don't really affect me, it's their decision. No, that's just not true. It's just not true. Because I think this was Mary, micro and macroeconomics, and one affects the other. They don't live in silos of each other. One affects the other. And it's the same thing as micro and macro community benefits. One affects the other. You know, one of the things I always say is, and I want to get off the topic, is we've had 2 high school football stadiums built in the last 2 years, Grayson and Carrollton. And you ought to see those stadiums. They are immaculate high school stadiums. They make Morehouse Stadium look like a Little League stadium. A high school stadium that's $60 million or some crazy shit like that. All built on the backs of black athletes that have made those schools powerhouses in the state. But I got Douglas and Mays over here about to close, or down about to close. Now people don't want to participate. The kid's so bad. They only bad because you don't participate. Because you think your kid, you say, I don't want my kids involved. Russell, man, we both know black people are only 3 degrees separation. So you can go to Woodward, but I'd be damned if you're not affected by what happens in the neighborhood. It's just the goddamn truth. Number one, your kids don't want to just be associated just with that. They want to be associated with their community too. How they talk, how they walk, how they dress, everything comes out of that community. I'm gonna segue here because I'm gonna try to be off here in an hour to something that I really don't give a damn. It's gonna probably make people mad, or somebody might repost it. If you never followed this guy named Deontay Kyle on, he has a Grits and Eggs podcast, or Eggs and Grits podcast. He's a young guy, he's really good, really smart, and he got creamed, I guess, the other day because he started talking about the black church in its relation to the black community, and people forgetting that it just wasn't the black church, it was ancestors of the church that made the movement who don't get enough credit. Something along those lines. You can pull it up. And he got all this pushback from black parishioners that he was demonic, he was this, he was that. Man, fuck that. I agree with that. The black church hasn't been the same for a long time. The black church has turned into a business. The other day, I just jumped online to see if I could find any other ministers that have Otis Moss, Jamal Bryant, this is other minister out of Ohio, who were actively out there saying, pushing their constituents to go and say, man, you cannot lose that 1964 Civil Rights Act. And I couldn't find them. But I am more than willing to be corrected. It's one of the reasons that black ministers are no longer black shepherds. I literally went on the Potter houses and tried to scour Google to see if the Potter House, which is T.D. Jakes' church that's run by his daughter and her husband right now, had they made any statements talking about gerrymandering and the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And I couldn't find it. And in social media, that's a problem. That's a problem. That means that you're just, that's Potter House. T.D. Jakes no longer the senior pastor down there. That's what I learned. And hold on one second. Sit down. My dog's in here. And that's the problem. It's one reason why I don't go to church. I don't see any shepherds in church. I see ministers, but I don't see any shepherds. This notion, which Kenneth disagrees with, this notion that we're going to get by this without any pain, like Marion says, is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. This notion that you're going to be able to put your head down, and I'm going to get back to Deontay Kyle, this is going to be a pain-free thing is crazy. That's not going to happen. And Deontay Kyle was just on there calling it out. And he had people calling him demonic, black people calling him demonic, and it's only about Jesus. It's only about this. Man, that's bullshit. It's not only about Jesus. Jesus had to have workers. And those workers were people's ancestors. There had to be sacrifices like 4 little girls in Birmingham. And I'm sorry, I've never brought into the thing of where you're going to get your just reward when you get to heaven. I don't think that's a reason to slaughter my children. And Deontay Kyle was just calling it out. He was just calling it for what it was. That you have to revere the people that came before you, to put blood on the line. And he's one of the few younger people that's saying it. There's another young guy now who's a pastor I think is great. And I think he's a pastor out of Reggie Sharp out of Chicago, who used to be my neighbor, who grew up in my neighborhood, because he and his parents were my neighbors at one time, who were saying, I don't know what's happened to this group of pastors my age. I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see them standing up and being in front. They don't want to lead from the front. They want to lead from the pulpit and behind. But like Deontay Kyle said, Freddie Shuttlesworth never led from the pulpit. And then after church, they were out there organizing in the streets. And they were getting death threats. Martin Luther King got beat up in Montgomery, had to back to Atlanta broke because his daddy told him to come home. That's how he ended back up at Ebenezer. His daddy said, come home. What are we doing here? Still the most powerful institution in the black community is the black church. I don't think we can count how much money black people have given to the black church. Is their job only to look after the church and their parishioners? Then you're not a minister. You're a business person. And you use the scripture to justify what you're doing. But you're not willing to put your bodies on the line or lead somebody or to help people willing to put their bodies on the line. I don't see it. And no souls to the polls is not the only thing that's going to work. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Come up with a better plan. Mary and I talked this week about how much money they say goes to the black church every year. I think they say anywhere from $10 to $19 billion a year. Y'all smart dudes hadn't got together to say, hey, let's create a capital market. Y'all can't come up with a way. Y'all can't get together to say, hey, I got my fiefdom here. You got your fiefdom here. Mine's bigger, to come up and say, yeah, but 10% of our tithes is going to be created to come up with a capital market. Black people are not even, African Americans not even in the fucking parking lot as a group. We got one really social media site, and you can't even get enough of us to go join fan base. Just join and start posting. Post your life. Post this to get him up to 30 million people or 130 million people per day. Yeah, I'm on Facebook because they got a fucking chokehold on it. The only way to get to you is to get through Facebook. We don't have any other way to do it. The only way to get through you is through Instagram. But if there's another way, I will do it. I'm on TikTok right now. I'm on it, even though I know the Larry Ellison and his son don't really have my best interest at heart. It's just about money to do. We're just a commodity. But they're going to start choking the algorithm when you start becoming a threat to them. And you're not going to have no place to go. You don't have black newspapers. You don't have enough black radio stations. You're paying for your own oppression. You're like the frog in the boiling water. And the water's heating up on you. You're acting like you ain't even feel it because you're so addicted to the comfort. Even as they're making it more uncomfortable. Today, they froze SNAP benefits. And yes, there's more white people on SNAP benefits than blacks, but let's not act like it's not enough African Americans that deserve that are on those SNAP benefits that's going to be hurting. We just seem to be at such a standstill when it comes to the wheel. We want to talk about golf, and I get it. I understand it. Who doesn't? Who doesn't, as Martin Luther King said before he died, who doesn't want to have a good life? You don't think Martin Luther King wanted to ride around in a nice Cadillac at the time and be in a nice house? And think about it. Martin Luther King was the preeminent pastor in the fucking world. You don't think they were trying to pay him to just be quiet? Gobsmack of money? Then you're naive. So when Deontay Kyle, finally a young influencer who you all might not like the language, is called the Grits and Eggs podcast. You got to pull it up. When he gets up there and he talks about this stuff, then people start coming down on him about the black church and being demonic. I'm getting, man, kiss my ass. He's saying what needs to be said. It's not enough black ministers in the age of 35 to 60 picking up this mantle and saying, nah, we got to get together to come together to get our people to do something. Man, it's 10 o'clock on Saturday. People got stuff to do. But, hey, one viewer at a time, right? I can't sugarcoat the shit for anybody anymore. Faith without works. What is it, Marion? Faith without works is it dead? It's the fact that you all forgot that 4 little black girls got sacrificed for your rights. It's just mind-boggling to me. That's why I don't like Condoleezza Rice. Fuck Condoleezza. Those were your friends. You knew them. What's the game plan? Is the game plan what Marion says? Just to let the pain get so high that they'll wake up? Because Louisiana, we not voting blacks, African Americans not voting at all. So they bring in all these cases. Mike Johnson's Louisiana. Amy Coney Barrett's from Louisiana. Greg Landry's from Louisiana. Representative Clay, that asshole's from Louisiana. And notice how Representative Clay always talks that shit to black women. He ain't never approached no black men in the Senate. But if you can't, in the Congress, but if you don't have the people that can move, if you don't, at this stage in politics, if you don't have the representatives that can move people, are they really that effective? Are they? Whether they black women or not, if you can't move young black men and talk to them in the language that they can get it and you can move them to go rest, are you really that effective? Because I don't need no policymakers right now. I need fighters. We need fighters. We need people that can move people. I'm not a big, I know Jamal Bryant has all his faults and stuff that he brings to the table, but the motherfucker surely is moving people. Why he's not able to get pastors together to say, hey, look, we need to have a different plan. Because I believe, this is what I believe. This is a tangent. I believe that pastors think they're businessmen, but they're really not. The businessmen are in their church. The businessmen are in their church. And I think that until pastors get to understand, say, hey, my talent is to bring people in, but they're businessmen here who we have to cut some type of deal with one another. And they need to run stuff, and they need to show us how to make money. They need to show us how to invest money because they do it better than anybody else. We're stuck. My plan for them is, hey, all the big churches in one area, y'all come together and y'all have like an NFL team, then you get a commissioner. Like you get the biggest churches in Atlanta to get together and say, hey, this is much of our money is going through tithes, and we're going to bring somebody in like Robert Smith, the richest black man in the country who knows what he's doing in tech space, and we're going to ask him to help us invest his money, and we're going to pay him a salary, and we're going to trust him to do it because he's successful at it, and we're going to follow his lead. And you do that in every state. And you create a capital system for African-American businesses so we don't have to beg people and jump through all these hoops through the church. Yeah, I agree. Pastors would get the men back if they spoke on social issues and stop telling us to be docile every time. That you can't get men who go, man, I'm not about to take, I'll take some, but you better show me how it's working. But let's be clear. I've said this numerous number of times. Every once in a while, you get this human, and I call them mutants, and they have this unique ability to make people move. I don't know what it is about them. They have this unique ability to make people move in a direction, and we haven't had one of those as a pastor since MLK. That little 5'8" dude had this unique ability, the unique voice, the unique cadence. Everything about him was something about him was unique that he can get people to get up and move. And I'm talking about a lot of people. And that must be what Tina Robinson saw in him. But it didn't come without sacrifice. And when you go back and you read some of like the children, and you read about Kelly Smith, a Morehouse man who was in Tennessee, who was the kids from Fisk, their main advisor because he was young. You read all the problems he caught from other African American churches who didn't want him doing that. And then you got to support him. Being a civil rights activist shouldn't be about poverty. I just don't fucking get it. This shouldn't be about poverty. There's no reason Diane Nash should have had to move to Chicago in poverty. Yeah, dead at 39 in poverty. If the church is going to be the big about which we do stuff, the church needs to be run by men, and men who say, no, that person who's out there speaking on their behalf deserves to have a good life. Then you don't have to have Jesse Jackson sitting on the board of Coke. The head of the Anti-Defamation League can speak the way he wants to speak because people take care of him. The people that he's speaking for. But it starts and ends with the church, because the truth of the matter is, whether we want to say this or not, man, you know this, the church wasn't created just to follow Christ for African Americans. It wasn't. Anybody believes that is a fucking liar. The church was created because it was the only place that African Americans could gather to discuss issues. Wait a minute. Issues. They could gather to talk about issues. When Richard Allen created the AME Church, it was the only place they could gather to talk about issues because it was outlawed. You think they just talked about Jesus Christ? You're crazy as hell. They talked about building more churches, which is why I always tell people that the AME Church was, Richard Allen was one of the most consequential people, and Absalom Jones, who broke off from Richard Allen, were two of the most consequential Black figures in the history of the world. That's why there's an AME church in damn near every city, because he understood it. You think they were just talking about Jesus Christ? No, they were organizing. Fredo Shuttlesworth was organizing. Kelly Miller Smith was organizing, because the church was the only place you could do it. It was a hall to discuss ideas. Everything that's African American centered came out of the church. Surely they just weren't talking about Jesus Christ. So my little brother said, well, Leonard, there's a lot of churches doing good work. What I told him was they have a horrible marketing plan. On my church truck, young Black guys don't even talk about church. They don't even respect the ministers. They respect them enough that they ministers, but they don't respect them as men per se, because they don't speak their language. Deontay Kyle speaks that language. Some of y'all don't like the language. Like, oh man, you got to speak to people in the language that you're talking to. I learned that from my church. And Jesus didn't go amongst prostitutes and talk proper. He had to talk to them in their language. So I think Deontay Kyle is 100% right. When you got people who don't recognize the people who make the sacrifices because you think they just were in the churches talking about Jesus Christ and God, that shit is just not true. Because if that was so true, churches would have never got bombed. How many Black churches got bombed for talking about civil rights? What happened to those churches? What happened to those men that could get together? And these not dumb men. Some of the pastors dumb, but most of the pastors not dumb men. They have PhDs. They educate. Y'all can't get together. Y'all can't put y'all egos aside because everybody wants to be the next Martin to say, this is not good for the community. We need to get together. I got 37 churches in my neighborhood of about maybe 43,000 people. The song Steal Away to Jesus wasn't about going to Jesus. So I don't know, again, what I do know. I hate to say that I'm starting to fall in Marion's point of view, that the pain's going to have to be so great to wake up my community to say, this is not working. It's going to have to be so great in Louisiana. It's going to be so big in Mississippi. Because I got more people who want to talk about Welcome to P Valley, which I'm all for escapism, of course. But the house is literally on fire. In Texas, all these smart Black people in Texas, and they are trying to run Jasmine Crockett out of office. That's not enough to take it to the streets. That's not enough for every African American in Texas to be talking about the same damn thing, which is gerrymandering of what Roland says is to take out anything Black progress. Then what is? And Black men can no longer keep asking Black women. And maybe Hakeem Jeffries and and Meeks and all those people out of New York. Oh, and here's my issue to people out of New York. Y'all don't have to deal with the fucking damn consequences. Most of the black people are in the South. And y'all don't even come to the South. You don't even try to move people in the South. The black voting population down here, unless they're really astute to political issues, don't even know who y'all are. And y'all don't have to deal with the issues. Y'all don't have to deal with the consequences. And you can't move people because you don't come down here and put yourselves out front and center. More African Americans know who AOC is than they do those two. And if Nikema Williams and these other reps don't get out front, I say they all need to be primary. Every last fucking one of them. Right now, it's about who's going to be effective. It ain't about you being comfortable in your job, because goddamn it, at $100 and something thousand a year, whatever it is that y'all making, y'all need to be out there earning y'all money. Because from here on, I'm being your ass. Because we have to have effective leadership that can reach these people that's still disaffected, and that means you got to walk the street and put holes in your shoes. Let me give you a prime example, and I'm going to go off. Victor Hill was the sheriff of Clayton County. He's in prison right now. And Vernon Jones, who used to be CEO of DeKalb County. Vernon Jones is now a Republican. And Victor Hill's in jail. And I promise you, Victor Hill's going to run for office if he's not barred from running for office when he gets out of prison. Because you know what they used to say about Victor Hill? He will walk those streets. He will walk during campaign season and walk in the cookouts that he wasn't even invited to introduce himself. And people were impressed by that shit. They're like, this man that walks to my cookout and he go up and down streets every day. And then one of the things he did is, as maniacal as he was, narcissistic as his little short ass was, he made black people feel safe in Clayton County. He did. One of the things they used to say about Vernon when Vernon was running for office, man, Vernon knew how to campaign. He would go and talk to anybody, everybody in the African American neighborhood. He would wear his souls out. And I imagine Vernon feels like, man, I did all that and I'm struggling to make a living. I put all these parks together and brought the largest acreage in DeKalb County history to be attached to the Beltline. And look where I'm right now. I'm struggling to make a living. So I'm going to go where the money is. I'm going to become Republican and start talking about black people, because that's the new branding right now. You want to get a whole bunch of likes and get your viewership up, on social media, come out and say something negative about black people. You want to make some money, do a Candace Owens. Because those same people that the top of the ticket is grifting, those people are grifting. Because we don't take care of the people to get out there and fight for us. We think they should take a vow of poverty. And I'm like, bullshit. I wouldn't take a vow of poverty. They're not mutually exclusive. It's not, it don't have to be separate. I'm talking for the black community, and yet I got to be poor, because the money that I'm talking about for the policies that I'm advocating for makes you money, but you don't think I should have a good life, and I'm advocating for you. That's nuts. And that's why they're easy to be brought off. Because people, what I see, other people see. And they know that those people are struggling. So they come in and they offer them money under the table. And then they got them. They got them because you didn't take care of them. Because our community didn't take care of them. And that's how the churches are operating, within silos. I got my parishioners. I don't want you to take none of my parishioners. I got mine. I got mine. I got mine. Hey, I got 6,000. You got 2,000. I got mine. I got mine. We're not going to get together, because it's a big dick swinging contest amongst ministers. And then you got people who worry about gay people in the church. I'm like, man, y'all crazy as hell. I could care less as long as those people are happy. Jesus doesn't say anything about that. But y'all are supposed to be the smart ones. You're supposed to be getting together and forming groups and get people back in the NCAA and moving organizations and core and the urban leagues. That's where those members came from. because the church just wasn't a place to talk about Jesus Christ in the Black community. It was a place of social activism. And they talked about other stuff. And then when it started, let me say it again, they started it because they couldn't talk. They couldn't gather anywhere else because it was against the law. But they let them gather in church because they just thought they were talking about this pious, meek Christianity, and slaves should know they should be slaves and blah, 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 blah. And those Black men like Absalom Jones and Richard Allen were in there not talking about that stuff. Not talking about that stuff. But anyway, I'm getting summoned. Close the door, please. Close the door. Close the door. I'm getting summoned, and I would hope that we don't just stay on here just to talk. I never intended to do this and just to be a regurgitation of news for the week. I talk about stuff that has some visceral reaction. I talk about it from the standpoint of what can my community do. And right now I feel a moral obligation as being someone who was born in 1965, right after that act took place, and I was to be able to have full citizenship. I feel there's a moral obligation for those of us older to talk about it so we can pass it on. And if that means that we got to build up the groundswell to say, hey man, here go the weapons that we have, and to convince people again, man, they only seem to understand when it's hitting their pockets. So you hit their pockets everywhere. That includes college athletics. They'll stop. Nobody wants to go back to the years where all Black players went to Tennessee State, Grambling, even though I wish they did. I wish they would do it for at least 10 years to help us get it back on our feet. Where the MAC and the SWAC were powerhouses, where every pro scout had to come to get the players they needed. So, no, Ryan Clark, you want to make a change, get the players in LSU to say, we're not going to take this anymore. We won't show up for the game on Saturday until Greg Landry shuts the fuck up. And I promise you, Greg Landry will shut the fuck up. I promise you. I promise you, if LSU turned on those lights on a night game at LSU and they walked out of there and them Black players refused to come out that locker room, I promise you, Greg Landry will start changing his tune. Promise you, and it's on national television. Promise you, if that happened at University of Alabama night game, University of Tennessee, University of Georgia, University of Florida State, Florida, Miami, University of Mississippi, Lane Kiffin, all those Black players going to Chambers going, hey man, I want to play, but god damn. I mean, he going to keep saying this. I'm not going out there until y'all tell him to shut up. They'll change. But you got to have the will to make change. We need to tell people, stop saying you're our ancestors. I ain't my ancestors. You damn right. Because you ain't had the will of Diane Nash, John Lewis, Jim Bevel, all those students up at Fisk who changed the world, in North Carolina A&T who changed the world, the Greensboro lunch counter sit-ins. You're right. You're not your ancestors. You better become your ancestors, though. Y'all have a good Saturday. Peace.